Hello and thanks for joining us here on France 24 for France in Focus. I'm Tom Burgess-Watson. Coming up in the programme, taking stock. All eyes on what action President Hollande will take after his party's dismal showing in nationwide municipal elections. And half a century of diplomatic ties, the President of China pays a state visit to France, during which business is never far from the agenda. And celebrating contemporary art, galleries from across the globe gather under the majestic glass dome of the Grand Palais for the Paris Art Fair. We take you there in just a moment. To our top story, the leaders of France's ruling Socialist Party have been licking their wounds this week. That's after a first round of nationwide municipal elections in which the voters sent a strong message to the government of President François Hollande. Well, the president has promised to take action, and many observers now say that the future of the Prime Minister, Jean-Marc Ayrault, now hangs in the balance.
Jean-Marc Ayrault put on a brave face leaving Wednesday's cabinet meeting. Yet after the ruling party's poor performance in the first round of local elections, some fellow socialists are now saying openly what many have thought for months: the Prime Minister has got to go.
When you're responsible, at some point you'll be held to account. If you failed, you have to go. There's no shame in that. I don't think the Prime Minister's met the challenge of the crisis.
On Sunday, Ayrault's Socialist Party picked up only 38% of the national vote. Meanwhile, the anti-immigrant National Front made major inroads, even scoring an outright victory in the northern town Hénin-Beaumont, taking the town hall out of socialist hands. With his party baying for blood, President François Hollande has promised to react with changes to come next month.
The President made it clear, without waiting for Sunday's second round, it was necessary to listen to the French people when they express themselves, and even when they abstain from doing so. The government must learn its lesson after the first round of the election.
What that means for Prime Minister Ayrault remains unclear. Asked whether the government would look the same in a week's time, Ayrault's Interior Minister and potential successor Manuel Valls answered with an enigmatic perhaps. Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius is also presented as a possible replacement. There's a cruel irony to it all. As a young member of Parliament 22 years ago, Ayrault himself called for a Prime Minister's sacking after an electoral failure.
I don't think any change should be a half measure. We need a change of Prime Minister and a cabinet's reshuffle.
Government officials say Ayrault's fate wasn't discussed at Wednesday's cabinet meeting. Yet for many observers, a second setback on Sunday would likely spell the end for the French Prime Minister.
Well, according to official figures, a record 36.4% of eligible voters didn't show up to cast their ballots in those municipal elections. And it was on the edges of large towns and cities that the level of abstention was the highest. Let's take a look now at some of the possible reasons for this seeming indifference.
Here, the overriding political force is abstention. 60% of the local electorate didn't turn up to vote in the first round of France's municipal elections. So are you going to vote?
I don't think so. I'm quite disgusted by it.
Did you vote on Sunday?
No.
Why?
I don't want to.
These rights activists hope to convince the despondent to get to the polls. 3 kilometers from Paris, Bobigny is home to 48,000, with an unemployment rate of 20%. Here, a third of the population is under 30. These two builders have voted only once in the presidential elections. At 25, they say they've already lost hope.
It's clear the way things are going. Prices are rising everywhere. Rent, petrol, bread, everything.
It might change for those who vote, I don't know. For us, we'll still need to get up early and work just as hard to pay such high taxes. We're past being angry. We've given up.
This 22-year-old sports teacher just voted for the first time.
I spoke to my friends. I asked why they wouldn't vote. They all said there's no point, that it all comes down to the same thing.
Further north in Roubaix, the same overwhelming sense of resignation.
They make promises that they forget as soon as campaigning's over. There's no truth in it.
If no one votes, then they'll have to start questioning things.
This local apolitical group's determined to motivate the electorate.
I understand, but you should still go vote in the second round.
We'll try.
With local abstention at 61% here, they have their work cut out.
The president of China, Xi Jinping, has been paying a state visit to France this week, providing both countries with an opportunity to reflect on the half-century that's passed since President Charles de Gaulle established full diplomatic ties with what is now the world's #2 economy. Well, as well as politics, pomp and ceremony, there was plenty of business to be done. And for French exporters, the sheer size of the Chinese market makes it absolutely irresistible.
There's little room for error when it comes to exporting to China, and this chairman personally checks all orders before they're shipped. Environnement produced air quality monitors used to help authorities measure and prevent smog. A perfect fit, in theory, for one of the most polluted countries in the world.
There are 700-800 cities where there are more than 1 million inhabitants, so that's roughly 30,000 monitors. We need to make sure this continues, and eventually these monitors are introduced everywhere.
But selling to China poses several challenges for Western businesses. Society and cultural traits are vastly different, and companies often have trouble finding their feet. When Godin initially set up shop, he sent a team of French employees to Beijing. After they failed to make much headway, he switched to an all-Chinese team, and that's when things started to take off.
First of all, you need to be able to speak perfect Chinese. Even our French engineers who were living in Beijing didn't speak Chinese well enough to completely grasp all the nuances of the language. The Chinese never say yes or no. You have to read between the lines, and for that, you really need to understand the language.
Today, the company's Chinese sales bring in some €3 million a year, 15% of its total activity. It's a success story the French government hopes other businesses will emulate, not least because of a whopping €25 billion trade deficit between the two countries. That shortfall is just one of the many reasons why France is doing its best to wine, dine and woo President Xi Jinping. 2014 is expected to be a promising year for Chinese investments abroad, and France wants its share of the pie.
Well, as well as being an economic powerhouse, China is also home to a thriving modern art scene. And this year, they've been chosen as guest of honor for this Art Paris art fair, which I'm at now in the splendid surroundings of the Grand Palais in the heart of Paris. Let's have a little look around and see what's on display. I'm here now with Guillaume Piens, who is the director of the Paris Art Show. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. Give us a sense of what this year's event is all about.
Okay, so Art Paris Art Fair, it's a contemporary event, art fair. You know, it's with modern and contemporary art, and we go. Also, we're trying to highlight a different geography of art, because you can here find galleries from Bangkok, from Thailand, for example, from Sarajevo. So we are not going west; we're really going east, and I think this is a very special touch here, because in Paris it's very rare to see Russian galleries or Chinese galleries, and so it brings something different.
One of the artists perhaps drawing the most attention here at the Paris Art Fair is the Chinese artist Li Wei, currently suspended in midair, dressed as an astronaut. Well, when he comes back down to Earth, let's go and have a word with him.
In my performances, I use a harness and cables to suspend myself, so I look like I'm weightless in the air. And that's how I achieve the effect in the photos I then go on to create.
So tell us, what's your obsession with hanging from the ceiling and hanging yourself from all these exciting places?
When you're a child, we all dream of flying like a bird, and that's what I aim to show in my works. A feeling of freedom, the freedom to move without any constraints.
And this is where we leave you, at the Grand Palais in the heart of Paris, for this week's edition of France in Focus. Thanks for watching, and do stay tuned to France 24.